The Haunted Huffy with Prologue by K. Brad Barfield. The Haunted Huffy with Prologue, an extensive narrative by K. Brad Barfield, details a surreal, multi-act journey centered around Proctor, who's haunted by a mysterious 1998 Huffy bicycle. This cursed bicycle acts as a catalyst, pulling Proctor into bizarre adventures alongside literary figures William Faulkner and Shelby Foote, and later Sunshine and Buddy Portis. Their escapades involve time travel, encounters with celebrities, philosophical crises, and the eventual revelation that they are characters in a novel written by K. Brad Barfield himself. The narrative explores themes of authorship, reality, and the nature of storytelling, culminating in the characters' liberation from their predetermined plot and their decision to collectively write their own future, ultimately healing the cursed bicycle and finding peace within their paradoxically fictional yet profound existence. Prologue: The First Ripple, revised. The year is 1915. The Arkansas night is thick and starless, a heavy velvet blanket smothering the piney woods. A ribbon of red dirt, blood dark in the gloom, cuts through the landscape. The only sound should be the chirping of crickets and the rustle of a possum in the brush. But tonight, there is another sound. It's a low, grinding throb of bass and a wailing guitar, a Gothic dirge that vibrates through the humid air. A pair of weak, flickering headlamps pierce the darkness. A black Model T, looking like a motorized hearse, rattles down the road, its antique frame shuddering with a sound a half-century away from being invented. From inside, Typo Negative's black number 1 blasts from a system of mid-range woofers and tweeters that have no right to exist. We know who was in that car, because the story remembers. It was Bill, Shelby, and yes, Proctor. Time travelers, all of them, coming back with the one thing that would curse and save a life. A rusty Huffy bicycle with one pedal and a bell. They didn't just drop it off, they delivered it. The car cruises past a small, whitewashed farmhouse where a Proctor family sleeps. Inside, a 1-year-old boy, the narrator of a story he doesn't know he's in, stirs in his crib, the alien sound a strange and fleeting invasion of his infant dreams. He didn't ask for the chaos, but maybe every curse is a strange sort of gift you send yourself. The Model T continues its impossible journey, the music fading down the dirt road until only the crickets remain. The next morning, Proctor's father steps on the front porch, and then he stops cold. There, leaning against the porch rail as if it had been delivered by a ghost, is a 1998 Huffy bicycle. Its frame is already flecked with a fine layer of impossible rust. One pedal hangs like a broken tooth. It is an artifact of temporal mischief left on his doorstep, a quiet promise of the beautiful chaos to come. Act 1: The Cursed Bicycle and the Whiskey Gospel by K. Brad Barfield. The cursed bicycle sat in my yard, a rusty, unyielding monument to suburban exasperation, It was a 1998 Huffy with one pedal, and if the AI vented to was to be believed, a basket full of shame. I'd tried to get rid of it, contemplated hauling it to the dump like the low-effort neighborhood vigilante I aspired to be, or simply putting it to the curb with a free bike, probably sign. But this was Arkansas. You couldn't just give things away, lest you and the recipient end up in jail. Besides, the bike had seen things, and frankly, it was causing a philosophical crisis, making me question if I was even really here. Even my cat had opinions. He was technologically literate, emotionally volatile, and he'd called me on a mobile phone just yesterday, meowing his displeasure about the two-wheeled menace. I tried to reassure him, insisting the bicycle was a figment of your dang imagination. But the truth was, it was an artifact, a silent witness to a particular, wild, lawless, whiskey-soaked Sunday of Southern mischief. That Sunday began with me, Shelby Foote, and William Faulkner, or Bill as we called him, already way off the rails. Bill, the Nobel Prize-winning author, was less a literary titan than a big old wild bear with red and green eyes, a mean streak, and a penchant for epic dumb decisions. Shelby Foote, the Civil War historian, proved equally unhinged, wetting his pants in the car in the bootlegger's yard. "Forget this mess, y'all," Bill declared, his voice a rumbling growl, even more slurred than usual. "Let's go get us some more whiskey. I want some mother-loving rum, people." Proctor sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Bill, it's Sunday, for crying out loud. We're in the South. You can't just go get some rum from the liquor store." Bill just waved a dismissive hand, nearly tumbling over. "I know a guy," he scoffed, already stumbling toward the bootlegger's house. Just then a pungent odor wafted from the car. Proctor grimaced. "Shelby, man, you're a mess. You wet your pants." Shelby, oblivious, just mumbled something about flanking maneuvers and holding positions. He was not the sharpest tool in the shed. Smelliest author I ever met, too. Bill emerged from the bootlegger's house with 12 fists of liquor. Rum, scotch, everything. I, of course, chose a Wild Turkey 101, my favorite drink. Our debauched Odyssey continued to an old property associated with the Foote family. Bill, in addition to the whiskey, was eating mushrooms like they were going out of style. Blue ones, not portobellos. He claimed they keep me regular, but I knew they were making him see Indians and stuff. He ran around in circles with flags, acting utterly nuts. "Man, Bill, that's not portobello," Proctor warned, eyeing the shimmering blue fungi. "That's the blue ones, man. I heard that stuff helps you see things." Bill, eyes unfocused and gleaming red and green, just chewed thoughtfully. "These things here, they keep me regular," he insisted, a beatific, if utterly mad, smile on his face. The purpose of our visit was, bafflingly, for Bill to teach those black folks how to play the banjo. I knew they already knew and frankly didn't like the clinky contraption. "Bill, the folks already know how to play the banjo, man," Proctor exclaimed. "If they want to, they just don't like that thing." "I'm showing them how to play." Bill was already stumbling towards a group of bewildered onlookers with the banjo clutched in his hand. Predictably, a man took the banjo from drunk Bill and broke it over his head, a moment of karmic equilibrium in the form of splinters. Later that night, around 9:30 p.m., we were all muddy, nasty, bloody, having fought and laughed, the wildest mess ever. We found ourselves at a deer camp in Arkansas, somewhere near Fountain Hill. Shelby, smelling like trouble, held a rapt audience of inebriated Arkansas outdoorsmen in a big concentric circle, orating about the Civil War like the ghost of a high school history teacher possessed by Matthew McConaughey. And the cavalry, my friends, was a torrent, a veritable tidal wave of destiny, much like this fine brew, though with fewer historical consequences, one hopes. Bill was meanwhile even deeper into his mushroom trip, chewing fungi like breath mints. As we rode in an old Model T, Bill in the back seat with two rednecks, the stench of a fart filled the air. Bill howling mushrooms and whiskey didn't smell it, he saw it. It was red and green, with a face and taunting him. He believed this fart bubble was a monster. It has eyes, Bill shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the air in front of him. And it's mocking me, Proctor, a red and green demon of flatulence. Proctor, chain-smoking high-octane weed, tried to calm him. Dude, we're just making a loop, man. That's not the case, man. Chill out. You know, this redneck's gonna lose his cool. But Bill was beyond reason. It's a monster, he howled. This guy up here is releasing monsters. Despite Proctor's attempts to calm him, he jumped out of the moving car into the dark woods shrieking. Proctor chased after him, eventually finding him bloody in a creek covered in sand and rocks, a cursed cart pulled from the depths. The authorities eventually rounded all three of us up, telling us to get out of here. We headed back towards Mississippi, but a wrong turn led us to Adora, Arkansas, a fact Proctor knows from the arrest record. We stumbled into a catfish joint, dirty, smelling, loud, all of us very confused. Some patrons even recognized Bill and Shelby. Bill, in a fit of jealousy because everyone was paying attention to Shelby, started throwing catfish. "Silence!" Bill roared, grabbing a fried catfish from a nearby plate. "Do you not see the genius among you? The man who wrestled bears and demons and wrote." And then he hurled the fish at a nearby table. It escalated into an all-out food fight, with ketchup on the walls, hush puppies flying, chickens, dogs, everybody involved. Even the county deputies joined the fray, eventually calling in state police, the Arkansas Bureau of Investigation, and all kinds of wild stuff. In the chaos, Shelby, pretty darn smart, executed a masterful distraction. He winked at Bill, then announced he'd hid everything. There was nothing, of course, but it got everyone's attention. "I'll tell you right now," Shelby yelled over the din, eyes twinkling. "I'll tell you where I hid everything. It's just near where we are." The entire population of Adora, local cops, state investigators, every racial and zoological demographic, and yes, bicycles, plural, stampeded down the highway searching for the phantom hidden goods. We simply got in the car and left. The next morning, the bicycle was back on Proctor's porch, a majestic, rust-flecked monument to his inability to just let chaos be beautiful. His son, however, had already stolen its bell, putting it on his forehead. He was, Proctor learned, joining a new rural mystic sect, sitting around ringing their bells, listening to hearts ring them bells. He was their oracle, their dingmaster supreme.
Act 2. Mushrooms, Banjos, and Bootleggers by K. Brad Barfield. The thing about Southern Sundays, especially in Arkansas, is that nothing ever really ends when it should. Our so-called Odyssey veered hard in the madness the minute Bill Faulkner decided that a little whiskey wasn't enough. He wanted more. He wanted some mother-loving rum, and he was willing to risk bootleggers' wrath to get it. Shelby Foote was no help. The man was already a mess, pants soaked, muttering about flanking maneuvers and holding the line as if the deer camp was Gettysburg. The car reeked of regret and bad decisions. Proctor, ever the reluctant chaperone, looked about ready to abandon us all and hitchhike to Mississippi. But Faulkner, he was on a mission. He emerged from the bootlegger's house with a selection of bottles cradled in his arms like a preacher carrying the gospel. 12 fists of liquor, rum, scotch, whiskey, even some off-brand schnapps that Shelby swore was for emergencies only. Me, I stuck to Wild Turkey 101, a choice that would later haunt my insides and my soul. We didn't go home, no. We headed for the old Foote property, where Bill, already half in the bag, decided it was time to educate the locals. But his education didn't involve books. It involved blue mushrooms, the kind that keep you regular, as Bill put it, and a banjo he swore was tuned to a higher cosmic frequency. He ran in wild circles with a faded Confederate flag talking about seeing Indians and stuff. His pupils dilated and his smile blissed out, halfway between Moses and a madman. Proctor tried to reason with him. "Man, Bill, that's not Portobello. That's the blue ones, man. I heard that stuff helps you see things." Bill, not missing a beat, popped another one into his mouth and said, "These things here, they keep me regular." And then he wandered off into the trees, talking to birds and ghosts. The whole purpose, allegedly, was to teach the locals how to play the banjo. They already knew, and if we're honest, they hated the clinky contraption. But Bill would not be deterred. "I'm showing them how to play," Bill insisted, wobbling toward a circle of onlookers, banjo clutched like a weapon. Proctor tried to explain. "Bill, the folks already know how to play the banjo, man. If they want to, they just don't like that thing." Didn't matter. Within minutes, the banjo was ripped from Bill's hands and smashed over his own head, splinters flying, dignity left somewhere in the swamp. Night fell, heavy and humid. By 9:30 p.m., we were muddy, nasty, and bloody like we'd crawled out of some Civil War foxhole, minus the glory. Shelby, smelling like trouble and cheap beer, held court at a deer camp near Fountain Hill, regaling a circle of half-sober Arkansas outdoorsmen with tales of the Civil War. "The cavalry, my friends, was a torrent," Shelby bellowed, waving a natty light like a saber. "A veritable tidal wave of destiny, much like this fine brew, though with fewer historical consequences, one hopes." Bill, meanwhile, was still chomping mushrooms, seeing visions of Indians, banshees, and who knows what else. The man was lost to time, trapped somewhere between a Faulkner novel and a fever dream. We loaded into an ancient Model T, Faulkner wedged in the back with two rednecks. The car quickly filled with the noxious stench of a fart so powerful that Bill, deep in his trip, didn't just smell it, he saw it. "It's red and green with a face. It's mocking me, Proctor, a red and green demon of flatulence." Proctor, attempting to maintain order, chain-smoked weed and tried to soothe him. "Dude, we're just making a loop, man. That's not the case, man. Chill out, you know. This redneck's gonna lose his cool." But Bill was already halfway out the door shrieking about monsters. He bailed from the moving car into the dark, wild woods. Proctor gave chase and found him knee-deep in the creek, battered, bloody, wrestling what he claimed was a cursed carp. Eventually, law enforcement got involved. They herded us all up and told us to get out of here. So we did. Sorta. Heading for Mississippi, a wrong turn landed us in Eudora, Arkansas at a catfish joint, disheveled, stinking, and loud. Some folks recognized Bill and Shelby. That was a mistake. Bill, in a fit of existential jealousy, started throwing catfish at anyone who'd look his way. "Silence!" he shouted, hurling fried fish with a poet's fury. "Do you not see the genius among you?" What followed was pure chaos, an all-out food fight, ketchup on the walls, hush puppies flying, even the dogs and chickens joined in. Deputies waded into the fray, then called in state police, the Arkansas Bureau of Investigation, and maybe even a wildlife officer for good measure. In the chaos, Shelby pulled off a legendary distraction. "I'll tell you where I hid everything," he announced, eyes twinkling, though there was nothing to hide. The entire population of Eudora, lawmen, locals, and a few stray bicycles, bolted down the highway searching for phantom loot. We slipped out the back and vanished into the night. Next morning, the bicycle was back on Proctor's porch, a rusted, mud-splattered memorial to our inability to let chaos be beautiful. And that's how it goes in Arkansas. Sometimes all you can do is ride it out. Act 3. The Time Machine and the Fried Chicken Prophecy.
When I say Faulkner and Foote weren't just recurring nightmares but actual time travelers, you might think I'm exaggerating. But after what I've seen, I'm convinced. They'd been coming forward to the modern era, slipping in and out of decades like raccoons raiding a well-stocked trash can. What did they come for? Not laptops, not the internet, not to warn us about the collapse of civilization. No, what drew them back was gas station chicken, pressure fried, served in a greasy paper sack, a golden, spicy miracle they never tasted in the 1940s. "Proctor, my boy," Bill Faulkner declared one afternoon, stepping from a shimmering vortex behind the cross at Conoco. This is God's own poultry. The ancients spoke of such succulence." Shelby, already halfway through a drumstick, nodded like a Civil War general who just discovered tactical superiority. "Indeed, Bill, a masterpiece of flavor. The Union troops would have surrendered for a single bucket of this." But the fascination didn't stop with chicken. These two literary outlaws developed a full-blown obsession with modern rap music, Migos, Future, Lil Baby, songs they would record onto battered tape reels and haul back to the past. Shelby claimed Bill had some 15s in the back of that Model T, whatever it is, Model A, and I believed him. "Proctor, play that Bad and Bougie again," Bill demanded, eyes gleaming with a manic intensity. "The rhythmic intricacies, the existential despair, but with a beat. You haven't lived until you've seen Faulkner, Nobel laureate, slapping 808s in a Model T, rolling through Crosset in tweed and dirt, windows rattling, bass booming. It was a full-on cultural insurgency, saving literature through bass, through time travel. My bad memories of Bill's discovery of trap go back to a club in Atlanta about a year or two ago, post-pandemic. We rolled up, high on Hawaiian stuff, Bill in a new eye patch for style. He reeked of whiskey and was popping marshmallows he claimed were interdimensional mushrooms. Then came to apparition, a dancer so fine she made my soul high-five God. Proctor paid for Bill to get a dance. Bill, whose entire nervous system ran on bourbon fumes and unprocessed longing, lost his mind. He couldn't process twerk physics. "Proctor, this woman is a whirlwind of pure, unadulterated motion," Bill stammered as the dancer began her routine. Proctor leaned in. "Don't mess with these girls, man. That's sunshine-level danger. That's phone call your mama and cry on the hood of the Model A danger." Sunshine was no ordinary dancer. She was a celestial scholar, a storm with a thesis, part demigoddess, part academic weapon. She had a Ph.D., and to everyone's surprise, a taste for Bill Faulkner. He disappeared, vanished into the night, or perhaps into another decade, with Sunshine at his side. Some say they're still out there, rolling through the 1920s and the 2020s, moving crowds wherever they go. In the Trump era, anything was possible. The ground was not the limit. The ground was just a suggestion. Act 4. Betty Ford Blues, The Gospel According to Bill, Shelby, and Sunshine by K. Brad Barfield. It's October 1982. The scent of palm trees, sun-warmed asphalt, and something distinctly herbal hangs in the California air. Bill Faulkner, Shelby Foote, and Sunshine, freshly teleported by a very irate God, stand blinking at the sign. "Welcome to the Betty Ford Center. New rules, new you." But this ain't your grandma's rehab. Here the beds are hard, the staff are harder, and the only thing stronger than the group therapy is the weed. Real California cannabis, the kind that would have made Thomas Jefferson drop his quill and whistle Dixie. The new rule is simple. If you're a notorious hard drinker, you must consume 1 ounce of the highest grade local weed every day for 30 days. Different strain, different trip. No cheating unless you want extra. The guest list: Hollywood's finest, washed-up TV cowboys, disco casualties, a couple of ex-presidential siblings, all buzzing, all wanting a selfie with the time-traveling trio. Even the house cat seems a little too philosophical. Bill, clutching a velvet pouch of Blue Dream and muttering about the metaphysical agony of being a celebrity stoner, gets called out by a group facilitator with the haircut of a failed drill sergeant. Mr. Faulkner, you need to put some pants on and finish your critical cush if you want to graduate from the program. Shelby's already halfway out a window with a tray of rehab snacks. He's the Scooby-Doo of escape rooms, a Southern fried Houdini. Anytime things get dicey, which is often, he yells, "Rahoo!" and leads a breakout, the house cat and 3 confused celebrities in tow. Sunshine, she's thriving. Turns out her thesis on the historical geography of controlled substances and American pop culture is suddenly hot property. She's invited to give a TED Talk on time travel and trap music, a feminist reefer perspective. Word gets out. The National Enquirer headline the next week: "Real-life Faulkner in rehab, drunk on whiskey, high on sativa, talks to Elvis's ghost." America panics. Congress holds hearings on the dangers of historical figures in modern pot clinics. Fans camp outside holding signs, "Make the past weedy again." Arkansas, meanwhile, declares a state of cultural emergency as Bell and Shelby start ending every group session with "Woo, pig suey" and "Roll another for President Carter." Thanks, again, to Shelby's Scooby-Doo level escape genius, the trio, plus Sunshine, and a dazed Clint Eastwood slip out during closing circle, commandeer a van from the valet stand, and vanish down I-10, blending into the golden haze of California myth. Act 5. Blunt Force Discovery, Area 51, and the Shaving of the Saucermen. The end of the Betty Ford weed cleanse wasn't a graduation. It was a summons. One morning, Bill Faulkner woke to a coded note slipped under his door. "Field trip. Bring your best stories and come hungry. U.S. Government." There was a whomp and a blip, and suddenly the crew was rolling through Nevada in a blacked-out government bus, armed guards up front, a cooler full of Gatorade, and Sunshine DJing from the aux cord. Proctor was already waiting at Area 51, lounging outside Hangar 18, blowing O's and telling tales about outrunning a tornado on a John Deere. The government had classified him non-threatening. His blood was 99% Delta 9, 1% nostalgia, so they let him hang out. Inside, things got weird fast. Aliens, gray, green, one with a mullet and chewing red man. Supercomputers, screens flashing TikTok memes and gospel lyrics. NSA handlers nervously handing out vape pens labeled Gelato, Secret. Faulkner was still tripping, explaining the difference between existential horror and regular horror to a 7-foot mantis with a PhD in Appalachian studies. Shelby, my man, had fallen in love with Glurb, a lavender-skinned being who communicated through vibrations and 80s country lyrics. Their tantric sessions sent ripples through 3 dimensions, literally. Shelby kept muttering, "Lord, they didn't teach us that at Vicksburg." Sunshine ran an impromptu yoga rap session for the aliens, who turned out to be huge fans of Missy Elliott. And then came Buddy Portis. Given the title Official Chronicler of the Intergalactic Oddballs program, Buddy set up shop on the porch of the Area 51 rec hall, called everyone out, and insisted on a ritual shave. Faces, heads, and even that weird tentacle on Gary from Zeta Reticuli. Within hours, every being on the base was shaved clean, lounging in battered lawn chairs listening to Buddy read Masters of Atlantis in deadpan Arkansas drawl. He said, "I reckon we'll find the secret of the ages, but first I'm fixing to have me another RC Cola." The aliens blinked. The supercomputers analyzed. The staff, high as weather balloons, started to wonder if they were the ones under observation. Buddy and Proctor swapped stories about Bill, Shelby, bootleggers, banjos, time loops, and the proper ratio of Red Man to Copenhagen for deep space travel. Portis, eyes twinkling, declared, "You know, son, I've written some strange books, but this right here is a novel God himself wouldn't believe." The aliens loved it. They started writing fan fiction. Buddy organized a live reading contest. Every creature tried their best Arkansas accent. Even the big blue mantis won an honorable mention for, "Y'all, fetch the tractor, the pond's boiling over." Shelby and Glurb were crowned prom king and queen of Area 51. Faulkner wrote the first cosmic southern epic, As I Lay Abducted. Sunshine live-streamed the first ever alien twerk tutorial. And Proctor just smiled, knowing he'd finally found the world's weirdest and most welcoming front porch. And America, the national Act 6, Cattle Drive to the Cosmos. Far out on the Huff. As the porch party faded into the intergalactic dusk, something truly strange descended. A UFO, half spaceship, half barn, touching down with a low cosmic moo. The doors creaked open, revealing a springy turf floor that mooed back. "Welcome aboard the Starship Holstein," announced the bovine captain, her uniform trimmed in bell-shaped gold. The air was a blend of patchouli, ozone, and hay. Feed dispensers lined the walls. There was even a self-milking coffee bar. Faulkner stood speechless, transfixed by the cud dispensers. Shelby shrugged. "Beats the back seat of a Model T." Buddy Portis scribbled furiously, already drafting a new cosmic western. "First man to bring Copenhagen to the Milky Way, I reckon." Sunshine did a quick waltz with the first mate, a beefy beauty with gentle eyes and a nose ring. Proctor rolled a bowl with the captain, discovering she was a sativa enthusiast from the planet Caledonia. They swung a big lap around Proxima Centauri, everyone got a whiff of cosmic grass, and the ship's AI, calling itself Calculus Prime, ran the show with a voice equal parts Siri and Sam Elliott. Intergalactic Police. Just as the Holstein glided past Saturn, blue and green lights flashed with a hint of ultraviolet. The Intergalactic Police pulled them over. A floating squad car shaped like a rubber chicken, crewed by beings equal parts Muppet and Jackson Pollock painting. Their language was pure psychedelic nonsense, barely deciphered by the translators. "Bloop! Frizzle frazzle! Mootastic, Daddy-O! License and registration, or we'll confiscate your snacks!" Everyone laughed so hard the ship began to wobble. Buddy offered them a copy of Norwood and a bag of Funyuns. After a ritual dance-off, the cosmic cops let 'em go, blaring a horn that sounded suspiciously like "Woolly Bully." The return. Back on Earth, the crew landed behind a bowling alley in El Dorado, Arkansas. Waiting was Jeff Bridges in full the dude regalia.
His robe billowed, sunglasses flashed, and he offered a hand. "Right on, man. Far out." Buddy and the dude bumped fists, and the world shifted. Suddenly they were inside a cosmic bowling alley. Bowling balls floated. Every pin bore the face of a U.S. president, and the 7-10 split was Nixon and Taft. Valkyrie bowling assistants sang ABBA and kept score on stone tablets. The air tasted like grape Faygo and nostalgia. God appeared, stroking a cloud beard and sporting a tie-dye halo. "My children, y'all did good at the catfish joint in Eudora. You brought harmony, chaos, and a bit of cosmic weirdness. But I got more jobs for you. The country needs your talents. There's a food fight at the Golden Corral in Branson, a turf war at a Waffle House in Macon, a karaoke dispute at a VFW in Toledo. You're my peacekeepers of the party, my sultans of the side quest. Now get to it, and remember, spare is just another word for a second chance." Sunshine grabbed a ball and let it roll. The pen scattered like prophecy.
Act 7. The Wasteland and the Waffle House Showdown. The cosmic bowling alley faded. The great Faygo and prophecy haze lifted. The crew stepped out the back door, sunrise over El Dorado, Arkansas just beginning to warm the pavement. The dude gave him a final laconic nod before the door swung shut, vanishing with a sound like a distant pin reset. There, in the parking lot, sat the Ram Power Wagon, gleaming, ready. But something was off. The Arkansas sunlight thinned, washing out to a sickly sepia. The air grew cold, smelling of dust and old paper. The Ram shimmered, glitched, and in its place was the cursed artifact, the 1998 Huffy bicycle, with its one pedal hanging like a broken tooth. A figure materialized, gaunt, impeccably dressed, a bowler hat perched on his head. He held a tightly furled black umbrella like a scepter. He gazed upon the hot misses with profound, weary disappointment. "This is the way the world ends," he intoned, voice dry as a dead leaf. "Not with a bang, but a memo." Faulkner squinted, cosmic weed finally wearing off. "Who in the blazes are you, feller? You look like a banker at a funeral." The man adjusted his tie. "I am the high adjudicator, and you, Mr. Faulkner, along with your associates, are a heap of broken images, anachronistic, vulgar, and chronologically unsanitary." He tapped the Huffy with the umbrella. "Your temporal joyrides are over. The party has been officially canceled due to numerous violations of the timeline's terms and conditions." Sunshine stepped forward, hands on her hips. "And who are you to cancel it? The interdimensional HOA? I am T.S. Eliot. I represent the Temporal Purity Commission. We do not approve of Mego Center Model A. We do not sanction gas station chicken as a valid historical motive, and we certainly do not resolve geopolitical tensions with catfish fights." He turned the umbrella on Shelby Foote. "Your folksy narrative charm is a violation. It must be sterilized." A thin beam of gray light flashed. Shelby blinked, and when he spoke, his voice was a flat monotone. Statistically, the flanking maneuver at the Eudora catfish joint had a 78.4% chance of success, contingent upon the variable of local law enforcement's propensity for fried foods. See Appendix B, page 412. Proctor stared in horror. "You turned him into a footnote." Elliot turned the umbrella on Faulkner. "And you, sir, your prose is overwrought, your passions unkempt." The gray light hit Bill, who clutched his head. What came out was clipped and lifeless. "Man is, he was, he will not be. The ham was adequate. "You monster," Sunshine shrieked. "You've gentrified his soul." Elliot almost smiled. "I am simply shoring these fragments against your ruins. This is my wasteland, and it is time for a proper spring cleaning. Your God is a recreational deity, a cosmic degenerate. We are reestablishing order." But he underestimated the crew. Sunshine, realizing logic is the enemy, blasted the most bass-heavy trap beat in her library. The sterile air vibrated. Buddy Portis, seeing his new friends being editorially neutered, recited Masters of Atlantis at cattle auctioneer speed. Proctor started yelling the story of the fart monster. The combined nonsensical energies hit the high adjudicator like a physical blow. The sepia flickered. The Huffy briefly morphed back into the ram. Elliot staggered. "This is improper. This is not what I meant at all." He raised his umbrella to the sky, which now looked like torn parchment. "If you will not be silent, you will be outwritten." The air tore open. New figures stepped through. A woman with haunted eyes and a pocket full of stones. A belligerent man with a six-toed cat. A frail woman in a white dress whispering of buzzing flies. Virginia Woolf, Hemingway, and Emily Dickinson had entered the chat, and they looked ready to rumble. The ultimate literary throwdown for the soul of the American timeline was about to begin, and the first battlefield was a Waffle House parking lot just outside Texarkana. The end, or the beginning of the next
Act 8, The Branson Crusade and the Gospel of Grits. The piece that followed the Waffle House Accord was as thin and fragile as a cheap diner napkin. We were holed up at my place back in the Delta, licking our wounds and trying to process a reality where Jeff Bridges acts as a cosmic repo man for cursed bicycles. The quiet lasted exactly 48 hours, ending with the arrival of a rust-pocked U-Haul that shuddered to a halt in my gravel driveway. A wiry man I'd never seen before hopped out. He didn't say a word, just handed me a clipboard. And when I asked who sent him, he silently and perfectly mimed the lyrics to Patsy Cline's Crazy. Then he and his silent partner unloaded wooden crates stenciled with the words, "Medicinal herbs, keep regular." It was like Christmas morning for the damned. Bill's eyes took on that familiar red and green glow as he cracked open the first crate, revealing rows of Wild Turkey 101 and canvas sacks filled with shimmering blue mushrooms. Shelby Food inspected a whiskey bottle like a field medic checking a vial of morphine. Buddy Portis just leaned against the porch rail, took a slow dip of Copenhagen, and nodded. He knew what was coming. As Faulkner uncorked the first bottle, the cool evening condensation on the glass began to move. It wasn't a drip, it was a script. Glowing cursive letters coalesced from the moisture, running down the label in rivulets of pure purpose. Branson, Golden Corral, Buffet War, go. Our new mission, delivered from our recreational deity via the holy vessel of 101 proof bourbon. We loaded up the Ram Power Wagon, now feeling less like a truck and more like a chariot for the biblically unhinged. Buddy Portis took the passenger seat, his notepad already open. Sunshine, ever the mission DJ, put her phone on the aux and queued up a playlist she'd titled Branson Intervention. It started with Loretta Lynn, bled into Migos, and then, for reasons known only to her, swerved hard into German industrial metal. The journey north was a testament to her eclectic, jarring taste. We crossed into Missouri, and the Ozark Hills rose up to meet us. The new shipment of mushrooms had already been breached, and Bill was in rare form. The garish, desperate cheer of the Branson billboards became his personal oracle. "Do you see it, Proctor?" he slurred, pointing a shaky finger at a sign for a Russian comedian. "Yakov Smirnov, what a country! But is that a celebration, or is it a question? Is it not, in its jocularity, a cry from the hollowed-out soul of the exiled man forced to jest for the amusement of his captors?" He saw Dolly Parton's Stampede Dinner Theater as not dinner theater, but as a Valkyrian apocalypse of pageantry and fried chicken. By the time we hit the Branson city limits, he was convinced we were entering a modern-day Valhalla, where the gods were wax figures and the river Styx was a lazy river at a water park. Shelby, meanwhile, had commandeered a tourist map from a gas station and was sketching out a battle plan on the back. "The chocolate wonderfall is their morale," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "It's a constant flowing symbol of excess and promise. If we can seize it, we can break their will to fight, but the supply lines to the dinner roll baskets are heavily fortified. It will require a flanking maneuver past the pot roast station." We pulled into the Golden Corral parking lot at the height of the dinner rush. The scene inside was worse than we'd imagined. It wasn't just a food fight, it was a full-blown perf war. On one side of the buffet, the Sun Visor Brigade, a hardened militia from retirees from Florida, had established a defensive perimeter using overturned tables. On the other, the Fanny Pack Phalanx, a multi-generational clan of tourists, were returning fire. The air was a storm of mashed potato mortar, dinner roll shrapnel, and the soft, wet slap of gravy hitting linoleum. We walked in, and the five of us must have looked like the four horsemen of the apocalypse with a designated driver. Sunshine didn't hesitate. She strode past the warring factions, unplugged the speaker piping in neutered country music, and plugged in her phone. A thunderous trap beat dropped, the bass so heavy it made the Jell-O cubes tremble. The effect was instantaneous. The fighting didn't stop, but it changed, the random flinging of food starting to unconsciously sync up to the rhythm. That was Faulkner's cue. He vaulted onto a central table, the great chocolate wonderfall cascading behind him like a brown, viscous halo. He raised his hands, a half-eaten steak roll in one fist. "Behold," he roared over the music, "you fight not for sustenance, but for the very soul of this carpeted Valhalla." And lo, he saw the gravy ark, a brown and viscous testament to man's ephemeral desires, a fleeting savory stain on the linoleum of eternity. For what is a dinner roll hurled in desperation across the battlefield of the buffet but the cry of a soul that has gazed upon the empty promise of the all-you-can-eat and found it wanton? For you are all lost, lost in the wilderness of endless choice, and your hunger is not for the flesh of beasts, but for the simple, profound truth of a meal that means something. While Bill delivered his sermon, Buddy Portis slipped away. He had diagnosed the core of the rot. He strode into the kitchen, where a terrified teenager named Kevin was hiding behind a dish rack. He gently moved him aside, found a massive stock pot, and got to work. He'd found the true source of the animosity, the poison that had curdled this American dream. The grits were instant. He fired up a burner and began his sacred work. Stone-ground grits, a scoop of bacon grease, a fistful of salt, and a block of butter the size of a car battery. He stirred the pot with the focus of a holy man, and soon a new smell began to cut through the chaos. Rich, nutty, and profoundly authentic. The aroma was the final blow. The fighting faltered. The tourists, dazed from the beats and mesmerized by Faulkner's epic narration, turned as one toward the kitchen. They dropped their sporks, they laid down their gravy-soaked napkins, and they formed a single orderly line, not for the buffet, but for the steaming pot in Buddy's hands. He began to ladle his gospel into styrofoam bowls, and there was peace. We had learned the lesson of our new commission. Our job wasn't to stop the food fights, it was to fix the bad food that caused them. We were apostles of authenticity. As we walked out into the cool Missouri night, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from an unknown number. There was no message, only a single attached image. It was the Huffy bicycle. It was painted a shimmering, glorious gold, and it was leaning against the front door of the legendary Sun Studio in Memphis, Tennessee. A moment later, a second text came through from the same number. "The bike knows the next song. JC."
Act 9. The Sunday Drive and the Sermon from the Satellite.
The morning after the Branson crusade found us holed up in a roadside motel that smelled of old cigarettes and quiet desperation. A fragile peace had settled over our chaotic little troop. Shelby was meticulously cleaning his glasses with a corner of the bedsheet. Faulkner was motionless on his bed, face down, in what he'd call a profound metaphysical slumber, and I'd call a whiskey coma. Sunshine was scrolling through her phone, while Buddy Portis stood at the window, staring out at the Ozark morning like he was reading the last page of a long, complicated book. This was his day, a Sunday. And for Buddy Portis, a Sunday meant a drive. It wasn't a casual affair. It was a ritual. He didn't just get in the truck. He first walked a slow circle around the Ram Power Wagon, checking each tire with a thoughtful kick. He cleaned the entire windshield with a wadded-up copy of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette and a splash of his drinking water. He placed a fresh, unopened bag of Red Man chewing tobacco on the center of the dashboard like a compass pointing toward some sacred, unwritten truth. Only then, when the preparations were complete, did he motion for us to pile in. "Time to go listen," was all he said. We rumbled out onto the highway, heading south toward Memphis. Buddy drove with a serene, steady hand, his eyes constantly scanning. But he wasn't looking for cops or speed traps. He was reading the landscape. To him, the world unfurling outside the windshield wasn't just scenery, it was scripture. A forgotten, collapsed barn was a cautionary verse. A hand-painted sign for a Baptist church that read, "Jesus is coming, look busy," was a piece of divine comedy. 3 buzzards circling high over a stretch of empty highway were form of punctuation he seemed to understand perfectly. "What exactly are you listening for, buddy?" I finally asked, breaking the comfortable silence. He worked the fresh chew in his jaw for a moment before answering, his eyes never leaving the road. "Just what the road's saying," he said in his deadpan Arkansas drawl. "Every road's a story somebody started and somebody else'll have to finish. You just gotta be quiet enough to hear your part." From the back seat, Faulkner groaned, roused from his stupor by the irresistible pull of pontification. "The road, Proctor," he slurred, his voice thick with sleep and bourbon, "is the linear manifestation of man's desperate forward-flung hope, a pavement of pathetic conviction laid over the cyclical abyss of his own despair. Or it's just asphalt. It depends on the whiskey." He then promptly fell back to sleep. We rolled into Memphis as the sun hung high and hazy in the southern sky. The city felt different, heavy with the ghosts of Beale Street, the lingering scent of barbecue smoke, and the phantom vibrations of a million guitar licks. Buddy navigated the streets with the unerring certainty of a migrating bird, pulling up at last in front of the Holy Land itself, Sun Studio. And there it was, the Huffy. It was leaning against the brick wall, just as a picture had shown, but the photo hadn't done it justice. It was painted a brilliant, impossible gold, gleaming with a light of its own, looking both like a pawn shop joke and a sacred relic from a pharaoh's tomb. We all got out of the truck and stood there, staring at it. "Well, I'll be," Shelby breathed, a look of genuine awe on his face. Buddy Portis was the one to approach it. He walked up slowly, his expression unchanging, and reached out a hand. The moment his calloused fingers touched the cold, golden handlebar, it happened. It wasn't a sound from the bike. It was a sound from everywhere. The radio in our truck crackled to life.
A speaker in a nearby storefront window hissed. Sunshine's phone, which had been playing a quiet instrumental, cut off and began to emit a low static. They all tuned to the same impossible frequency. Then a voice came through, a voice smooth as velvet, thick as honey, a voice that had been dead for nearly 50 years. It was Elvis Presley. But it wasn't a recording. His voice was tinny, laced with the faint hum of a vacuum tube and the subtle hiss of cosmic radiation, as if broadcast from a derelict satellite drifting in the lonely dark of low Earth orbit. He wasn't singing. He was preaching. They tell you the soul of it is the beat. They tell you it's the words. But that ain't the whole truth. The truth is in the static. It's in the grease. It's in the ache in the back of your throat when you sing it like you mean it. The voice paused, and in the silence we could almost hear the empty space between stars. Y'all did good with them grits. You reminded him. But the music has gotten too clean. The edges are all sanded off. There's no danger in it. The king is gone, but the throne ain't empty. It's just unplugged. A new sound is needed, but the old rhythm is lost. Another pause. Then the final cryptic directive. Find the crossroads where the devil lost his tune. And just as suddenly as it began, the broadcast ended. The radios returned to their commercials and pop songs. We were left standing on a Memphis sidewalk, stunned into silence. We had just received our next mission from the ghost of Elvis Presley, who was apparently moonlighting as a cosmic DJ from beyond the grave. Buddy Portis stood there for a long moment, then calmly spat a stream of tobacco juice into the gutter, turned back to the truck without a word, his face giving nothing away. "Well," he said, his voice.
Act 10. The Black Universe and the Eulogy for a Friend. We found ourselves in Clarksdale, Mississippi, standing at the mythic crossroads where Highway 61 meets 49. The sun was setting, bleeding purple and orange across the flat delta horizon. We were looking for a lost tune, following the spectral orders of an orbiting Elvis, but the road had a different story it wanted to tell today. As the last sliver of sun dipped below the earth, a strange stillness fell over our group. It happened to Faulkner and Foote first. They stopped mid-sentence, standing rigid as statues, their eyes unfocused, staring at something far beyond the horizon, beyond the sky itself. Sunshine and I exchanged a worried glance. Buddy Portis just spat his tobacco juice and waited. He knew better than to interrupt a transmission. After a long minute, they both shuddered, coming back to themselves with a gasp. Faulkner looked older than I'd ever seen him, the usual manic glint in his eyes replaced by a deep, hollow sorrow. "It's not what we think it is, Proctor," he said, his voice quiet and raspy. "This reality, it's not built on anything. It's just a story told in a void, a black universe. There's nothing beneath us but ink, and we're just the shapes it makes before it dries and fades. We're all just anecdotes." Shelby nodded slowly, his face pale. "We just got a notification. Not on a phone, not on a bottle. It came on the quiet. We have to go back to our time." "Why?" Sunshine asked, her voice gentle. "A funeral," Shelby said, the words heavy in the humid air. "For an old friend. Proctor. My Proctor." He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw a strange and sorrowful reflection. "He's passed, and Bill has to give the eulogy." The mood in the Ram power wagon on the journey back to my place was heavy and solemn.
The mission from Elvis was 1,000 miles away. When we arrived, Faulkner walked past the crates of whiskey without a glance. He sat on the porch swing, staring into the darkness. "I can't do it drunk," he said to the night. "The whiskey, it tells good lies. This has to be the truth." We all watched, stunned into silence, as he pulled a small lacquered tin from his inner coat pocket. He opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of cotton, were 3 mushrooms. They were a different strain than we'd ever seen, not a vibrant electric blue, but the deep, dark, velvety blue of a midnight sky, flecked with tiny silver specks that seemed to absorb the light. He ate one, chewing slowly and deliberately. The trip back wasn't a wild lurch through time. Sunshine, with a quiet understanding, helped Bill focus on a specific memory. The smell of rain on Mississippi dust, the sound of Proctor's old Ford, the taste of cheap coffee from a tin mug. The world outside the truck's windows didn't warp, it dissolved, peeling away layer by layer until the landscape of the present had given way to the soft, sepia-toned world of the late 1940s. We were parked on a dirt road beside a small, white-steepled church. The air was thick with the scent of pine and the sound of quiet weeping. This was it, the funeral. Faulkner stepped out of the truck. His eyes, now piercing, clear blue, seemed to see everything at once. He was sober, steady, and radiated an aura of profound, heartbreaking clarity. He walked to the front of the small gathering by the freshly dug grave and turned to face him. He began to speak, and his voice was not the boom and roar of a drunkard or the slurring mumble of a poet, but the clear, resonant toll of a summoning bell. "We are told that a man is the sum of his deeds," he started, his gaze sweeping over the simple, sorrowful faces. "That he is the house he built, the children he raised, the legacy he leaves behind. And that is a fine and comforting story, but it is a story told to children in a warm room to ward off the cold truth of the night outside. The truth, you see, the truth is that the night is all there is." He paused, letting the weight of it settle. "We are born out of a silent black universe, an endless starless inkwell of nothingness, and a life is but a single brilliant fleeting drop of color flicked against that infinite void. Our friend Proctor, he was not a king, nor a poet, nor a general. He did not write his name in the stars. He wrote it in the dust of the roads he drove, in the quiet patience with which he listened to the nonsensical ramblings of fools like myself, in the steadfast way he showed up day after day. His life was not a monument. It was a candle, a small, stubborn flame that lit a tiny patch of the darkness and said for a little while, 'I am here.' This black universe does not care for our stories. The ink is indifferent. It will swallow our triumphs and our tragedies all the same. And so what is our purpose here, in this brief, impossible flicker of light? It is not to conquer the darkness. It is to defy it. It is to perform the most sacred and rebellious act a mortal creature can. It is to remember, to tell the story, to be the eulogy for all the other candles that have gone out." He looked down at the simple wooden casket. "We stand here today not to mourn a light that was extinguished, but to honor the light that burned. We take the memory of his warmth, of his quiet strength, of his simple, profound being, and we make it a part of our own flame. We tell his story, so that the ink does not have the final say. We do not bury a man today. We are planting a memory, and it is our sacred duty to see that it grows." "He is not gone," he finished, his voice dropping to a near whisper, a sound of absolute conviction. He has simply been written back into the ink. And oh, what a fine and beautiful story he was. Silence reigned in the churchyard. The only sound was the wind sighing through the pines. He had given them not a eulogy, but a gospel. The true gospel, stripped of all its whiskey-soaked bluster, found at the very bottom of the void. We drove away as the mourners began to disperse, leaving that quiet patch of Mississippi behind and dissolving back into our own time. The mission from Elvis was still waiting at the crossroads, but we were different now. We understood. The chaos, the music, the food fights, the time traveling, the whole wild ride, it wasn't just a party. It was our desperate, beautiful, and sacred duty to paint as much color as we could onto the canvas, to tell a story so loud and vibrant that the silent black universe couldn't help but listen.